The Autoflight system consists of the flight directors, the autothrottle, and the autopilots. You can use them separately or together. You can use the flight directors and the autothrottle for all phases of flight. You can use the autopilot for all phases of flight, except takeoff. On this airplane, when you engage the autopilot, you engage all three autopilots. You communicate with the Autoflight system through the mode control panel. The Autoflight system communicates with you through flight mode enunciations displayed on the top of the PFD. The Autoflight system flies the airplane by controlling thrust, roll, pitch, and in some cases, yaw, in the same way a pilot does. The lateral path is controlled with modes which control only roll. The vertical path is controlled with combination modes. These modes control both thrust and pitch. There are also combination modes which control thrust, roll, and pitch, such as approach mode. Approach is used to fly a fully automatic approach and landing. During most operations, the FMC and the Autoflight system are used together. You can obtain optimum speed and flight path information from the FMC. Then fly the FMC profile by selecting and operating the appropriate modes of the Autoflight system. Or, if you desire, you can connect the FMC directly to the Autoflight system. You do this by engaging two Autoflight modes, LNAV and VNAV. LNAV, or lateral navigation, controls the lateral path of the airplane. VNAV, or vertical navigation, controls the vertical path and the speed of the airplane. When using LNAV and VNAV, the FMC and the Autoflight system will fly the most economical flight profile from climb through descent to your initial approach fix. All you have to do is drink your coffee and monitor the system. You can use as little or as much automation as you desire. You, the pilot, must determine the appropriate level of automation for the flight conditions. Now let's learn how to operate the Autoflight system by taking a typical flight. Let's begin with pre-flight. First, turn on the left flight director. When turned on, the flight director command bars appear and flight director enunciates on the left PFD. Autoflight enunciations appear in this area. Flight director enunciates when the flight director is on and the autopilot is not engaged. Flight mode enunciations are shown here. Autothrottle modes are shown here. Roll modes are shown here. And pitch modes are shown here. Newly engaged modes are displayed with a green attention box. The box remains for 10 seconds. On the ground, when the flight director is turned on, takeoff go-around or TOGA enunciates for both roll and pitch. We'll discuss the details of TOGA mode when we're at the end of the runway for takeoff. The first officer turns on the right flight director. Next, arm the autothrottle. There are two switches, one for each autothrottle servo. Touch the highlighted area. Continue. When armed, the autothrottle is ready to be engaged. Notice there is no enunciation for autothrottle armed. Next, place the autopilot disengaged bar to the up position. This allows the autopilot to be engaged. Now check the Heading Track Reference window. This airplane has the ability to fly selected ground tracks as well as selected headings. You use the Heading Track Reference switch to change between the Heading Select and the Track Select mode. Heading is the normal reference for takeoff. Change the reference to Heading. Next, set the Bank Limit selector to Auto. In Auto, the bank limit varies between 15 and 25 degrees depending on airspeed. We'll discuss this control in more detail after we get airborne. In addition to the vertical speed mode, this airplane has a vertical mode called Flight Path Angle. We'll use Flight Path Angle later, but for now, use the Vertical Speed Flight Path Angle reference switch to set the mode vertical speed. Next, set the Altitude Increment selector to the Auto position. In Auto, the knob is rate sensitive. Turning the knob quickly causes the altitude window to change by a greater amount than turning it slowly. In the Auto position, the smallest altitude change you can make is 100 feet. In the 1000 position, the altitude window changes in even thousands of feet, 5,000, 6,000, etc. However, if the reference selector is changed from Auto to 1000, the value in the window will not change. For example, set 10,500 feet in the altitude window. Now change the selector to the 1000 position. Notice the window does not change. Now rotate the selector by 1 detent. The window increases to the next even 1,000 feet. Rotate the selector again. The window now increases by 1,000 feet. Now rotate the Altitude Increment selector back to Auto. You just received your final load sheets from dispatch and obtain your clearance. Now use the IAS Mach selector to set V2 in the IAS Mach window. LNAV and VNAV can be armed on the ground. Arm both modes now. Armed modes are displayed in white. Your initial heading after takeoff is 130 degrees. Use the Heading Track selector set 130 degrees in the Heading Track window. Your initial altitude after takeoff is 5,000 feet. Use the Altitude selector to set your initial altitude in the Altitude window. This completes the pre-flight of the Autoflight system. Here is a summary of the Autoflight pre-flight that you can do before you have your papers and clearance. Here is a summary of the Autoflight pre-flight that you can do once you have your papers and clearance.